Sifter for the ear.
News, interviews, reviews, cinema, TV, streaming. Action.
Hi, y'all. This is Jerry Williams, a.k.a. TV Jerry. The Virginia Museum of History and Culture is hosting their first in-person movie myth-busting event on Friday the 25th. They'll present a screening of the 2000 Revolutionary War epic The Patriot, starring Mel Gibson, with live commentary from the staff on what's true and what's not. Tickets include after-hour access to the Give Me Liberty, Virginia and the Forging of a Nation event. Because of the movie's almost 3-hour running time, they'll be fast-forwarding through certain scenes, and they suggest watching the movie on your own ahead of time. I'll have a link on the webpage for this show at tvjerry.com. Today's guest is Isaac Regelson, who's made his career as a location scout and manager for movies, TV shows, and commercials. We'll have a lively discussion right after this review.
Sifter Review of the Week.
Untamed on Netflix. The opening scene with climbers scaling El Capitan launches this series with a riveting sequence. There are a few other tense moments sprinkled through the show, but they become less impressive as it progresses. Eric Bana plays an investigator at Yosemite, actually shot in Canada. After a woman is found dead, he and his new assistant from L.A., Lily Santiago, start working on the case. This series is basically a traditional cop procedural in a beautiful natural setting. Bana's character is given 2 flaws, neither one very original, and subsequently plays the role grave and grim. Santiago manages to add a lively personality, even though she's also given a personal burden to overcome. These individual issues add more formula drama. The origins of the mystery aren't especially original, and by the last episode, the credibility starts to wane. Ultimately, this is a high-end cop series set in a lovely location. I gave Untamed 3 out of 5 stars. Isaac Regelson, it's good to finally get you on Sifter for the Year.
Well, thank you for having me.
And we're going to talk about your main gig, which is, well, you tell me now, you're a location scout and you can be a location manager. Why don't you?
Yeah, I'm both.
What's the difference?
So scouting, you're finding locations. So you're finding what's in the mind's eye of the creatives involved, which for me is mostly commercials and photo shoots and things like that. So it could be the photographer, the director, ad agency folks. And then you go into a process of managing that location. And I usually expect to be managing the locations I find because I've developed relationships.
Right.
I want to make sure that we leave them as we found them. And kind of my motto is my job is to be invited back.
Oh,
so
good.
that's
Yeah.
kind of how I like to see it. And being on location there for the shoot kind of ensures that. And it's good for everybody.
So when you say management, so that's everything from like making sure there's any kind of permits that have to happen, make sure there's parking, making sure that people understand what you're going to do to their house or their building or whatever.
Right. And when I scout locations, it's something you want to keep in mind. What's the feasibility of being able to shoot it? You want to make sure that there's room for, grip trucks and camera trucks and everything, parking for the crew. There's incredible locations that were perfect for a shoot, and I've got to not bother with them because if we can't get in there and do it, it's pointless. Or even something like near the airport. If we're recording sound and there are jets flying overhead, it doesn't work.
How did you get into this field?
So,
it's not something you go to college for.
Right. I'm an architect. I'm a licensed architect in the Commonwealth. I've always been interested in architecture and places. I'll tell you, my dad was a physician at MCV. He started the oncology department at MCV, which is what brought us to Richmond from Buffalo, New York. Moved here when I was 3. Virtually every weekend, he always tried to take the time to take me and the kids, which is what I referred to my sisters and our friends and everything, take us exploring. We would go to Civil War sites, unknown Civil War sites, trepsing through the woods. We would literally go into abandoned buildings. My dad with a flock of kids. Yeah. One great memory I have.
Sounds very safe.
Oh, very safe. Well, first he was a physician, so.
Oh, yeah, right.
But, I love telling people the story is that we used to cross what we all called the Rickety Rackety Bridge to Belle Isle. From the north bank of the James River, there was a 1-lane bridge, wood timbers, that went across the bridge. You could still see a piece of it from underneath the Lee Bridge where you cross over. And there was a metal works on Belle Isle. And we used to go there and explore Belle Isle. And we pull up in our old beat up Rambler station wagon, my dad with a carload of kids, and there's a security guard at the gate right there. He's like, "I'm sorry, sir, you can't come up on this property." And my dad said, "I own this island."
Oh,
And the security guard said, "Oh, okay, sir," and opened the gate and let us in.
wow.
Who would have the audacity to just say that, right?
Exactly,
Except the
exactly.
owner. So my dad always just likes exploring, and I think I think it's in my blood.
As an architect, did you ever design and build anything, or did you get into this
No,
business?
virtually nothing. I mean, this is a dilemma that I have. The big arts, I don't know. Architecture, you don't have the money to build it yourself. You're hired to build it. And it's a team of people, and you have to compromise your art for what somebody else wants. And it's really hard for me to do that. And here I am today writing screenplays and interested in getting more involved in filmmaking in more creative ways than what I'm doing now. And it's the same thing. If I have a screenplay and I give it to somebody, they're going to make it into something completely different.
Yeah.
It's the same money and people looking for profit and all this other kind of stuff, which is going to compromise my art. So I don't know about going one to the other, but you asked me how I got involved in it. I knew that there were people who scouted. I knew that that was a job in filmmaking, and I thought it would be really cool. I guess it was about 2001. I was in line at the 50-foot reel.
Footnote.
Flickr's Attack of the 50-Foot Reels was an event where people had 1 month to make an in-camera edited film on one roll of Super 8. It was run by James Parrish.
I was standing next to a woman in line, and we started to chat and went into the screening together. And anyway, we ended up starting to date. And she was talking about getting involved in film while she was down here in Richmond. I was like, oh, maybe I'll find out about that location work. So one day she shows up on my doorstep, breaks up with me. I was rather devastated. I go across the street to some friends of mine that live across the street, and the wife of the couple was a producer. Well, I didn't know what a producer did, but I was, crying on their shoulders, and I was saying, well, this is going to get me off my ass. I'm going to find out about that location work. And she was like, you're interested in location work? I can give you work.
Ah.
So I started, it was like that, and started getting involved in it. With a background in architecture, having grown up in Richmond, knowing people, knowing the city, as well as from open high school into college, I was doing events all the time, creating events. And as a location manager, that's essentially what you're doing. You're an event manager. So it was kind of a natural progression. It overlapped with architecture for about 9 months, maybe a year. And then I started doing it exclusively. And the pay was commensurate.
Yeah. And what was your first
I don't
big
know.
scout? You don't remember your first big scout?
No, because I was doing a lot of little commercials and photo shoots and stuff from the very beginning.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, the first big show that I worked on it's called Capital City.
Footnote.
Capital City was an ABC pilot directed by Rod Lurie, but it never aired in the United States.
Tom Trigo hired me as an assistant location manager for that. That was kind of an interesting thing because Tom left about a week or two into our work together, and they brought in a female location manager. And I tended to know more about what was going on because she was brought in fresh, and I had overlapped with Tom.
Right.
And there were these situations where you had these misogynist, top of the line people. They would not talk to her. They would not ask. They would look at me and ask me the questions. Then I would
Wow.
turn to her and ask her the question. It was crazy.
Wow. And this was in the 21st century.
It was in the 21st
Wow.
century, yes.
Surprise guest drop in.
I want to hear more about some of the experiences, some of the movies, some of the TVs, and even some of the stuff that's not. But somebody that I believe you have worked with dropped in to say hello. Let's see who this is.
Oh my God, Andrew. One of my favorite people in the world.
Andrew, welcome.
Hi, everyone.
Footnote.
Andrew Carnwath is a director and production designer from Richmond who's worked on features, TV shows, commercials, and music videos for over 25 years.
First off, I consider Isaac to be a wonderful human being and a great friend. He always brings a lot of joy to our job, which I feel like with all the chaos and everything that happens on set, it's always nice just to kind of like take it seriously, but also just realize what we're up to and just go, this isn't rocket science. We're not saving lives. We can do this in a professional manner, but still have a good time. Anytime we shoot an exterior in a neighborhood, we scout, you do all the due diligence. Isaac finds out what day trash pickup is. We know that, recycling is going to be driving through around 10 o'clock on a Wednesday, but that's the day we have to shoot there. So we prepare for it. Notoriously, though, a grounds crew will show up next door. it is crazy the amount of things that can happen in a seemingly boring location. And so that to me is also always remarkable. It's just like how many fires can you put out like as quickly as you can? And then a lot of times he can find us everything. Everything checks the boxes. And then next thing you know, a delivery truck shows up with an entire room group going to the next door house.
Yeah.
And those delivery drivers do not care if we're shooting a commercial or working on a movie. They don't care.
Well, I'll say this, Andrew. We're in Richmond. 9 out of 10 people are wonderful and accommodating. Sometimes there'll be a noise issue and I'll have some money in my pocket to try and ask a working person, somebody who cuts grass for a living.
Right. It's their job.
If they could suspend or come back another day, not only will they say yes, but they won't let me give them any money. I mean, not that I'll have a lot to give, but they will turn it down because we're in Richmond. We're hospitable. We're friendly.
There you go.
We want to accommodate. We were filming down in Norfolk, and we had permission to be at Waterside.
Footnote.
Waterside in Norfolk is a festival marketplace that was opened in 1983.
Well, there's a park immediately adjacent to Waterside. And the director was like, I want to shoot there. So I scurried and I tried to contact the city. And the person with the city said, look, there's no way to get a permit right now. Just go ahead and do it. So we're hours into setting up. And Norfolk has a program very much like Venture Richmond, these private public partnerships. They control the park. They had an event going on nearby. And the guy comes in from that organization and he says, what the hell are you people doing? Get all this shit out of here right now. And he was angry. I just asked, just hear us out. Let us talk to you. We must have sat there for a half an hour. We talked to him. It was no, 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 get it out of here, blah, blah, blah. Until it came down to the point, well, let me get my boss. Let me get her down here with a contract, walk her through it and see if she's willing to say yes. He did that. They said yes, and we were able to shoot.
What I want to chime into, though, Isaac, is that you also have to give yourself credit that part of the reason that you get a good result in most cases when you're dealing with these folks is the way you handle it individually, meaning you handle it in a way that I think gives another person the opportunity to see your side and then find some middle ground that makes sense. Because I think it's part of how you carry yourself that gives you a better chance of a good result. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, because you have people coming with that attitude. We're from LA. We're going to do it because we're important, And I think having that warmth and that willing to have the discussion works.
We were shooting some driving scenes once, but we needed some safe roads to drive on. There was an issue with the road surface was kicking up some gravel. You were on that.
Andrew is nodding his head. Yeah,
but don't say any more than that about what it was. But one of the people in the camera department started reaming me out for selecting that location because of the gravel kicking back towards the camera. I didn't pick that location. It was the producer standing right next to me as he was reaming me out for picking that location.
Oh, those wonderful Hollywood producers. Andrew, can you think of a time when he did come up with a location you had no idea was even around or was just like, wow, this is amazing?
Remember that shoot we did where we needed like this really weird, like...
The White House underground bunker is what it was described to find.
And, I'm sure there was some, pull or swipe or, whatever you want to call. The director probably found some image of this like concrete clad looking bunker thing. And I got to be honest, like, I had no idea. I mean, it was at the bottom of the Carillon, right, Isaac? It was the basement level of the Carillon.
Oh,
and
cool.
The shape of the Carillon and the fact that it had this elevator and it had all these hallways that sort of came off of it. It was an awesome... Now, it was a great aesthetically pleasing location for what we were doing. It made total sense. But, then there was a couple challenges with it, but it was out of Isaac's hands. But, the load in was a little strange. I remember I had this large table that had to sit in the middle of the room, but there was no way to get it in there without
one long stair.
Yeah, and it had to come in pieces. And so, but that's all part of it, meaning the location was so dynamic and so cool that you just figure out how to make it all work. For my role in the small cog of what we're up to is then it's like, okay, fine. Then I have to design our huge table to come down in pieces to support this location. I also wanted to say, Jerry, the one thing that's also remarkable about Isaac and one of the beautiful things to see from afar is always on set. You will see Isaac sitting on the porch with either the next door neighbor or someone in the immediate neighborhood area, either the homeowner of where we're shooting, and you just see him sitting on the porch and they're having like an intimate conversation and people are laughing. And again, I think it promotes this idea that, like, yes, we're trying to get our job done. Sure. I mean, we're stepping in, we're invading your neighborhood, we're invading your house, we're taking over traffic, we're doing all these things, but there's still a sensitivity and a human part to I think the way Isaac handles himself that I think is leaps and bounds, at least in Virginia. It adds up to a lot. And it's always really fun to see that.
Well, thank you for
Either
that,
way,
Andrew.
I've always liked that. And to Isaac, too, you can't walk anywhere in this town without running into somebody that knows Isaac. And so I think that also, as a person that's looking for locations and needs to have a lot of interaction and contact with a broad amount, a ton of people, I think having that personality makes a lot of sense with that type of career.
By the way, Isaac, this is the reason we kept jumping back and forth on the dates, because Andrew was doing the surprise and Isaac kept changing the dates, and I'm like, Andrew, sorry, but he's got to move it. So that's why we went through all those machinations.
You know what? I was thinking of that before we got on the call. And to be honest, what the joy of what that means is that both Isaac and I have been pretty busy lately. So
Which is incredible.
It only means that we've been working and that, things seem to have changed a little bit from the beginning of the year, regardless.
That's good news. All right. Thank you,
All
Andrew.
right, see you soon. Thank you, Andrew.
Be nice,
Very
Isaac.
kind.
Be nice.
Oh, he's always nice.
Okay, bye.
As you said, you do commercials, you do some movies and TV shows. How are they different? What do you prefer? Is one, obviously movies are here longer, so you probably get more work out of it. But other than that, obvious, is there one you prefer or one that's more interesting or challenging?
Well, so the thing is that movies and TV shows, which I've done very little of, tend not to pay very well. The commitment is very long. The weeks are very long. Locations, typically your 6-day week, possibly even a 7-day week.
Yeah.
The commercial world pays better. You've shorter jobs. You go from one to another to another. But, a lot of those people that I work with over and over and over again, and I'm not going to turn them down because they have the opportunity to work for a movie that's coming into town.
Well, you did work on some movies, obviously, and one of them was Loving. What were some of the challenges?
Footnote.
Loving was a 2016 movie about the historic interracial marriage case in Virginia.
Well, there were a couple of locations they were having trouble finding, and one in particular was, quote unquote, a boarding house. The idea was it was a big old house, maybe a Victorian, Queen Anne, something like that, farmhouse, and wanted it just kind of sit isolated in a field, maybe a few trees around it, but not up in the woods. But it needed to be real clapboard. It couldn't be vinyl siding. It couldn't be aluminum siding. And you can't tell that until you get right up on a building. So if you see a nice old farmhouse in the distance, you really got to drive up to it before. So anyway, we were going as far away as an hour and a half to try and find this perfect thing.
Wow.
And it was really, really tough. And then I remembered my mom had an antique shop, and there was a woman at the antique shop who I knew grew up in Mechanicsville. And I knew that the farmhouse that she grew up in still existed. So I was asking her about it, and she told me that her nephew, who I knew, owned it. And I go and look at it, and seemingly to me, it looks perfect. And I take as many pictures as I can, showed it to the team, Jeff Nichols' team, and they said, we got to go see this. So we met immediately the next day. I made an appointment. We got in, and they just looked at me and said, Isaac, this is perfect. And it feels so good when you hear that.
Wow, yeah.
Especially when we've been looking as hard as we've been looking, but it's right out of our back door.
Yeah.
I mean, like some subdivisions and some forest, and you wouldn't even know that it was there.
Well, now let me ask you, because you said it had to be clapboard. Why did that matter? How could you tell the difference on camera?
I guess with aluminum siding and with vinyl siding, there's a reflectivity that the material has that for painted clapboard doesn't have. For any creatives less authentic, that may not matter. But they were trying to be very, very authentic, which, if I could bring up another project in terms of authenticity, working on the project with Richard Kelly, The Box.
Footnote.
The Box was directed by Richard Kelly, and the story took place in Virginia, but was actually shot in Massachusetts.
But he needed establishing shots of Richmond. And they were supposed to be period because the film was taking place, I think, about 1976, I think was the date that the film was taking place in. Of course, I grew up in Richmond during that time, and I remember a lot of it. So they hired me to do two different things. One was they needed plate shots of different areas of Richmond. Plate shots is just the camera sitting still. Then you can start to digitally alter it fairly easily from a stable camera. And we just went around Richmond, mostly downtown, and just stole shots. Like we set up a camera in the middle of Broad Street on Churchill, facing towards downtown. We did it on the overlook behind WRVA or Child Savers on Churchill, and a few other shots. But then the ridiculous thing was that they kept me on to do basically historic research to find them imagery so they could digitally alter those plate shots back to 1976. Now, I love Richmond history. I love looking at old photos of Richmond. And I almost think I shouldn't have been paid to do this work, but I spent a lot of time doing it. And VCU Archives, Ray Bonus there, who's no longer with them, but at VCU Archives, I came in, told him what he was doing. He took slides that they were cataloging, took them out of the basement and brought them to me so I could start looking at them. And I helped them kind of create the images that they would use in the movie by doing really bad mock-ups in the paint program on my computer of kind of how it should be organized and how the photos referred to those different views and things like that. So that was a really fun project.
Yeah, Ray Bonus he is a great guy. When I did Dirt Woman, you may remember there's a scene of Gray Street, and it was like all these cobbled together photographs of the old days. That was from him. He had that in his library somewhere, and he let me use that, which was great. Of course, I also have to remember, of course, the sadness about the box, which, as you said, was supposed to take place here, was that they wanted a U-Crops grocery store, and they had to recreate a whole U-Crops grocery store in Massachusetts.
That was a big loss for us. What
was your biggest challenge when somebody said, this is what we need, and it took you forever, or it took a lot of digging?
I'm remembering a shoot that we did for a hamburger chain based out of Kentucky or Tennessee or something like that. The idea that these two guys drive their pickup truck off a cliff and they land and they're still eating their hamburgers or something like that. Not that we would drive a truck off a cliff, but we needed to somehow shoot them in front of something that looked like a cliff. It was kind of really a hard thing to find where you would have access, where you could get all your crew, where there's a cliff face in Richmond. I mean, there are plenty of quarries along the river, but there's really very little access to them. They're also not clear. I mean, you have trees in front of those granite cliff faces and stuff like that. But I came up with the idea to use a dump. So, there are all these giant piles of dirt and rubble around.
Right.
And it actually worked really well.
It smelled nice too, I'm sure.
I think it was a worksite dump, so I don't think it had garbage in it. But it had, a giant pile of dirt that looked like a cliff face, more or less.
So you mentioned earlier screenplay. So what else have you got going on when you're not out looking for locations?
I've written a couple of screenplays that I really want to get off the ground. One in particular, the one I wrote during COVID because I had some time on my hands.
Didn't we all? Yeah.
Yeah. When I guess I was in my 20s or something like that. I was in my grandmother's apartment and I came across a postcard of Havana. So I asked my grandmother, I was like, were you and Joe, my grandfather, in Havana? And she tells me they were there the night that Batista was overthrown, New Year's Eve, 1958.
Wow.
And that's all I got of the story. I mean, we talked all the time. We told stories all the time. But of that particular instance, that's all I got of the story. Other than when they got back to the States, somebody asked, what was revolution like? And they were like, what revolution?
Oh, wow.
So back in 2017, Sarah, my then girlfriend, but I proposed to her in Havana. I went to Cuba.
She's now your wife.
Now my wife. And I came up with this story, this comedy of this old Jewish couple who are able to take their first vacation ever after a long career, end up in Havana, not knowing what is going on there politically, and they're in the middle of the revolution, and even helped to foster it a little bit. So it was a lot of fun to write.
And I guess that'll be shooting in Puerto Rico, not in Havana.
Well, the way things currently are, maybe not, but Cuba, Havana is amazing and so well preserved.
Oh.
And
when was the last time you were there?
In 2017.
Because a lot of it's fallen apart.
Oh, well, it's falling apart, but there's still,
there's some beautiful areas, right? Yeah, especially if you go out near the touristy beach area. Downtown, we stayed downtown, we were there, and there's a lot of those buildings that are just
yeah, absolutely. With a little set dressing, you can clean them up. The street that we stayed on, I'm forgetting the name of it, but it's a big commercial street. Has a lot of great 1950s buildings on it, 1940s buildings,
Right.
and stuff. Fairly well preserved. Once Cuba opens up, all the money's going to come in there, and they're probably going to tear half of it down. So, we got to get into Cuba to film authentic stuff before capitalism ends up ruining it in such a way that they tear down all the old stuff and build glassy, ugly, new architecture down there.
Yeah. Oh, cool. So one question, as you know, I always like to ask, last question, when you're not working on a job or writing a screenplay, what are you watching right now? TVs, movies?
Sarah and I do a lot of both. Generally, we're watching the Criterion Channel for movies, and we tend to watch older movies. One that we recently watched that I think of is Hobson's Choice with Charles Laughton. And it's a great feminist film from the 1940s. I think it's like 1947 or something like that.
Wow, okay.
It's hysterical. I love Charles Laughton. He's one of my favorites. And I'm still watching the final episode of Succession.
Oh, wow.
The final season. Actually, I'm on the last episode of the last season. And I get to work on Succession, which was pretty cool. They shot in Richmond for one day.
Right.
And they had me on for 2 weeks to try and find a diner for them. And I didn't find them exactly what they were looking for, or they ended up just deciding to shoot that scene in New York, where they're based out of. And HBO was an absolute pleasure to work with. They treated me so well.
By the way, when you're watching that last episode, it was an earlier episode too. I interviewed Justin Geltzoller. He worked on Succession. He wrote and produced the TV scenes that were going on where the reporters were on, on the TVs in the background. It says, going on now, blah, 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 the election coverage.
Right.
He wrote all that.
I saw a lot of election coverage.
Yeah, a Richmond guy wrote all that stuff and produced that specific stuff.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Well, anyway, Isaac, thanks so much. This has been a lot of fun and enjoyed having you on the show.
I really enjoyed it and I always enjoy seeing you, Jerry. So thank you for having me on.
That was Isaac Regelson, who's made his career as a location scout and location manager for movies, TV shows, and commercials. I'll have a link to his website on the webpage for this show at tvjerry.com.
Coming soon. In theaters.
The Fantastic Four, First Steps. This is essentially an origin story of the popular Marvel quartet. Oh Hi! Sophie Brooks wrote, directed, and stars, along with Logan Lerman, as a couple who takes a romantic getaway that gets kinda kinky. House on Eden. Another writer-director-actor, Chris Collins, stars in this film about a group getting ready to film their next paranormal investigation and encounter a malevolent spirit. The Home. Pete Davidson stars in this thriller about death and more in a retirement home. BTS Army, Forever We Are Young. This documentary about the popular K-pop group opens on Wednesday the 30th. Also next Wednesday, Together, starring real-life couple Dave Franco and Allison Brie. They move into a house in the woods where an unnatural force awaits. Mystery Movie. To encourage people to take a chance, customers can buy tickets and find out what movie it is when it actually starts. It's always a new release that's coming in the next few weeks. Tickets are only $5, and it happens Monday the 28th. This is now at Movieland and Regal Cinemas.
TV and streaming.
Happy Gilmore 2. Adam Sandler returns in this sequel to his 1996 hit. Washington Black on Hulu. Follows the 19th century adventures of George Washington Wash Black, an 11-year-old boy on a Barbados sugar plantation who embarks on an impressive career. Leanne on Netflix. A grandmother's life is upended when her husband leaves her after 33 years of marriage. And the Leanne in the title is the Tennessee stand-up Leanne Morgan. Project Runway on Freeform and the next day on Hulu and Disney. The big news is that Tim Gunn and Heidi Klum are back. Next week, we'll meet the makers of 2 short documentaries that'll be playing in Charlottesville in August. This is Jerry Williams. Thanks for listening.
For more Sifter, including literally thousands of reviews,
visit tvjerry.com.
That's a wrap.